We need to talk about notifications, and we need to rethink how we use them and how much we allow them to fragment our attention. Most of us now have 6 or more digital inboxes. Think about it for a minute. You've got your work email, you've got your personal email, you've probably got Teams or some equivalent. You'll have WhatsApp, you might have Slack, you've still got text message, and that's before we've included social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. That's 10. Now the problem is most people, not through any fault of their own, but have notifications on all of, or at least most of these digital inboxes. Now what that's doing is it's creating this addiction to distraction. To understand why notifications are so detrimental, I think it's important to understand a bit about the science, the neuroscience. So it's useful, I think, to understand brain function in 2 distinct categories. You've got top-down processing and bottom-up processing. So top-down processing is generally your central executive network, so prefrontal cortex, I'm sure you know. And we associate that with very much intentional, goal-oriented, focused execution. So that's fairly familiar, isn't it? That's you doing your best work, deep work, absorption, your brain and you at your best. Now, imagine you get a notification. What happens then is it drives bottom-up processes, which is sensory and environmentally driven. Because of course, think about it from an evolutionary perspective. Your brain has to be vigilant to the outside world, doesn't it? Historically speaking, an unexpected sound from your environment could have been a threat. So it demands attention. Even if you decide not to look at your email, the fact that you've had to make the decision is the distraction that has derailed your top-down, higher order cognition. And this is why notifications are so detrimental. Task switching cost, research suggests, is a 40% drop in your efficiency. Because it's harder for you to focus on complex tasks, it takes you longer to do them and you make more errors. We also know that notifications and distractions generally increase what we call cognitive load. Think about it, your brain is just overwhelmed with all of these decisions and these environmental stimuli, which means it becomes overloaded, your working memory becomes overloaded, and that has a direct effect on information processing. So as information processing becomes compromised, so do critical thinking and decision making, problem solving as well, all start to suffer under this distraction-rich environment. And it elevates our level of stress. Research published in the Journal of Experimental and Behavioral Economics found that people who received a notification every minute had elevated stress and anxiety. I mean, is it any surprise? Now, I think the problem is for many of us, and this is based on the work I do with organizations, that anxiety really manifests as an anxiety to respond. We feel if we don't respond to that notification, maybe we're missing something important. Maybe we're letting someone down. And then of course, that creates the expectation loop that all emails are responded to within the first 60 seconds. And it becomes a recipe again for stress, anxiety, and burnout, all the while compromising decision-making, problem-solving, critical thinking, attentional deep focus, and anything that really we care about. See, all of this really comes down to a single principle, and one that I'm a passionate believer in. Your attention is your single most valuable asset. It's not your time, it's your attention. So without being all doom and gloom, let me give you some practical insights into how you can do this better from a team or organizational perspective, and also some notes from an individual perspective. So you and your team, these are the steps I would encourage you to decide or consider. Number 1, do an inventory of all the digital communication tools you currently have. As I've said at the top of this video, there are loads of them. And then decide which one you're going to use for what. Until you've done that, any downstream conversations are going to be very difficult because everyone will be using different tools for different things, right? Start with clarity on what you're going to use for what. And then, and this is absolutely key, decide what are you going to do when things are urgent? Because let's face it, everyone feels that every now and again something is urgent. And for many of us, that's true. So you need one method to communicate with someone else if you need their attention immediately. Now you can decide however you choose. Some people, they pick up the phone, right? And that's their urgent channel of communication. For others, it might be something distinct. I work with emergency physicians, right? They have beepers. You need an equivalent to that, because until you've solved what we do when urgent, everything will be treated as urgent, which is how many people currently operate. So you need to decide on what is urgent, how do we communicate, and to maintain that with ruthless separation. Because then you'll realize that everything else can be treated as non-urgent, which also prompts further discussion. Okay, well, non-urgent items, what's the agreed upon or the expected response time for those? Most people agree that, well, 60 minutes is fine. In fact, it can probably go maybe longer. You need to decide what that is. But you see what you'll do. The minute you've decided that's urgent, everything else is not, all non-urgent digital communication tools, notifications must be turned off. The minute you do that, you'll have created the conditions, maybe for the first time in years, where people can, for the most part, create and maintain deep focus on the things that count. Now, from an individual perspective, I think there might be some additional considerations. Keeping the theme of the inventory, do an inventory of all of your most common distractions, which won't just be, of course, your laptop, but there'll be your phone as well, right? Your brain doesn't differentiate between notifications. If it's from a device, it could be your watch, it could be your phone, it could be your desktop, as I've said. It draws naturally bottom-up processes and compromises all measures of productivity and well-being. So I would say turn them all off. Do your best. I mean, turn off all non-essentials, and anything that you feel is an essential notification, really challenge it. Remember, these things are designed to make you anxious. They are designed to addict you. So if you feel you really would be better with them being on, really challenge whether that's your logical brain speaking or your addicted brain speaking. Then naturally you'll find your well-being improves, your ability to focus improves, but also you'll find you have ever greater time availability. Because as I've said, attention is everything. So the minute you regain your attention, because you're creating an environment that makes that possible, all cognitive factors downstream of attention, which is everything, they all start to improve.